good evening, everybody. We are a very select crowd today, and thank you for your attendance. I hope we are all interested in training and support in, well, generally, but specifically in digital health matters. So what I'd like to do today is basically to share with you some of the things from what we've been doing as part of the WHO Collaborating Center. But before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge country. This is an Australian custom where we acknowledge the first custodians of the lands on which we are meeting. And I include the custodians of the lands where you're coming from as well. And to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. What I'd like today is basically ask the question, do we have enough well-trained health professionals? That's what HP stands for, or digitally mature health professionals. Talk a little bit about kind of what is the curriculum and what are the principles of developing curriculum that might interest people. And I'll share with you a bit of the work being done by the International Medical Informatics Association and some of the work done in the UK and obviously some of the work we've done in Australia. And then we'll have a nice question and answer session. So what is a digitally mature health professional? As I've heard here, the digitally mature health professional has the knowledge and skills to appraise critically and successfully adopt and use appropriate digital solutions in their health settings, to empower healthcare consumers, and to achieve AI-driven precision healthcare. Understands the process and impact indicators of successful implementation of digital health tools. Understands the importance of data quality and interoperability standards, or standards where you can share and link information. Governance and ethical issues, legal and social issues associated with digital health and its implementation and adoption. And the digitally mature health professional also measures and evaluates the impacts of digital health technologies on the health system, the organization, the health professionals, and the citizens, taking into account how mature they are, how mature the health system is, how mature the health organization is, how mature the health professionals are, and how mature the citizens are. And I'm sure all of you would have heard of the digital divide. So there's something, it's in the back of our minds all the time. So to the question, are we training enough digitally mature health professionals? Well, the answer is no, according to this group of researchers from the UK. This is a group at the University College London and reported in the BMJ. This group were developing universal health informatics competency domains. They were using a scoping literature review. They analyzed the content of curriculum across the UK and conducted expert consultations with relevant educators and trainers. The relevant and important findings from this project were that most of the curriculum for health informatics training were mostly developed in the USA. We won't talk about USA right now because I guess to some extent they are a separate kind of a group. But it's important because the competencies are similar. The International Medical Informatics Association has developed an exhaustive list of informatics competencies, and I'll show you some of them in a minute. They have been very poorly adopted. And this group also found that curriculum has been developed without standardized methodology and often not including key competencies. And across the 71 postgraduate medical specialty curriculum in the UK, the 50 competencies they identified as important for health informatics and for health informatics training were poorly represented and absent in two specialties, child and adolescent psychiatry, and the core surgical training program. And their final conclusion is that postgraduate medical education in the UK neglects health informatics competencies set out by international standards. Therefore, key health informatics competencies need to be urgently integrated into training curricula to prepare doctors to work in increasingly digitized healthcare environments. And I use the term health informatics to be synonymous with digital health, recognizing that digital health includes more than just health informatics. But an important recognition is that what they found for the medical profession applies to most health professions in the UK and also likely in most countries. So with that in kind of back our minds, that even in the UK, where they have been doing this for the last 20, 30 years, they're not quite there yet. This group mentioned International Medical Informatics Association curriculum. We'll have a quick look at it now and see what it is briefly without spending too much time on it. Essentially, the EMEA, the curriculum and educational model, describes the biomedical and health informatics knowledge and skills required by students to get a specialization or knowledge in biomedical and health informatics, to reach a career progression. All right, in this case, we're talking about bachelor's, master's, and doctor's level, that leads to learning outcomes in health professional programs. All right, so that's kind of the purpose of this, of the EMEA curriculum and learning outcomes. So we talk about medicine, nursing, healthcare management, dentistry, pharmacy, public health, excuse me, health record administration, computer science, informatics, and so on. Obviously, all these learning outcomes need to be transformed into educational components with appropriate depth and breadth to be part of the training program, which is, I guess, to some extent, what we're talking about today. Now, the next slide looks at the EMEA curriculum. It is, as the UK group found, a comprehensive and exhaustive list. This is the core information that's required, the core knowledge and skills that's needed according to the EMEA, and recommended learning outcomes for health professionals, either as users or actually inform and empower users, doers, and leaders of the digital health field or the biomedical and health informatics field. This is a very busy slide, all right, but it's essentially looking at the recommended and optional learning outcomes. And the plus and amount of pluses refer to basic or introductory, intermediate, and advanced levels of knowledge and competencies and skills required. So you talk about, kind of the core knowledge and skills include information literacy, among others, without boring you with a slide, and it's probably hard to read anyway. So it covers a range of issues, which we will adapt, and we will see how they are distilled into the UK and also the Australian setting. So this is the core knowledge, all right, all the way from information science right through to nomenclatures and vocabularies to ethical security issues and evaluation and assessment. So it's important to know that implementation and evaluation is cross-cutting and is embedded throughout the curriculum. In this case, they're talking about evaluation of information systems. So some of the recommended topics or domains in which informaticians or digital health practitioners need to have skills in include medicine, health and biosciences, health system organization, informatics and computer science, mathematics, biometry. So again, some of these are, all right, the different domains. And these are what they consider the optional. But I guess the point I wanted to make in showing these three fairly complex and busy slides, is that this is an exhaustive list of competencies that's been recommended through a lot of people doing a lot of work through the auspices of the International Medical Informatics Association. As noted by the UK group in their research into competencies in the UK setting, this list of competencies, though exhaustive, is poorly adopted. So there needs to be some simplification. There need to be, as they call it, a pragmatic list of universal competency domains for all postgraduate health professionals. And I would probably enlarge it to all health professionals. Doesn't matter where your level of university qualifications are. So the work that they've done has resulted in this. So as I mentioned before, they developed universal health informatics competency domains. They used a scoping review, a literature review, analyzed curriculum, and consulted with experts in the field that they are studying. Now, this is a relatively busy slide, but I need to take you through the headings at least. This is the pragmatic list of 6 universal competency domains proposed for all doctors and allied health professionals, right? Including information governance and security, system use and clinician safety, or for that matter, we can expand that to user safety, digital communication, information and knowledge management to support sharing, patient empowerment, and emerging technologies. For instance, say like information and governance and security will include things like cybersecurity, all right? Identifying scams and implications of security breaches. So you would be aware of some of the ransomware and other things that's happened within the last 2 years. So in terms of clinician safety, especially in this pandemic time, all right, we need to be sure that whatever advice we use with COVID-related kind of applications does not jeopardize clinician safety. The interface between the system and the clinician is important. So system use, obviously we have to talk about electronic health records, and there's an emphasis in a lot of countries on prescribing. They need to be able to critically appraise new technologies and be aware of the effects of good and bad systems and so on within the safety and quality issues. So that also refers to things like handheld devices, tablets and so on, that not just clinicians use, but data collectors use as public health officials and managers and so on, who are part of the health domain. Digital communication is very important, all right? Transfer and retrieval of digital data, shared care especially, integrated care, data protection and security, remote working, right? How we actually do, especially in this pandemic era, where we need to protect ourselves and our patients from infections with deadly infections, and understanding the risk of under-communication and over-communication. Information and knowledge management is important, especially in terms of use in providing decision support, which is where kind of personalized medicine comes in. secondary uses of data, so use of structured data encoding to allow population health and public health activities to be done, and also to allow quality improvement to be done. All right, so accessing data for population health, accessing data for research and audit, and obviously data analysis. Patient empowerment is an important aspect. All right, it is not just teaching them and prescribing information resources to them. It is actually helping them to learn how to use the information resources and appraise them whether they're useful for their own health. And obviously, we need to be aware as a digitally mature health professional of the emerging technologies. Right? We are going through and gone through the whole mobile health and decision support era. We're now in the era of artificial intelligence and using that data of real world data to improve the way we provide care. So this is what the UK group has come up with in terms of recommending it in their postgraduate health education to train mature or digitally mature health professionals to become leaders and doers of digital health in their hospital or private primary care settings. So from that, we come to Australia. Some of the areas we're talking about, I mean, there are a number of Australian higher education institutions that do informatics and digital health or e-health kind of domain subjects and degrees. So all the way from Sydney or New South Wales through to Victoria, Melbourne, Tasmania, Queensland, you know, and South Australia and so on. So there's a whole bunch of masters, bachelors, and certificate courses. So all these universities offer that. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of some of the content and the curriculum. And you find that it's kind of not all that much different from the UK distillation. And all of it goes back to the EMEA, the International Medical Informatics Association curriculum, which is pretty exhaustive and has been the basis for accrediting master's courses across the world, across universities across the world. So the one in my own alma mater, University of New South Wales, so looked at digital health as a subject within the Masters of Public Health, Masters of Health Management, and Masters of International Health, with a focus on the principles, but focus on the practice, and therefore the implementation and the evidence, right, which is research and evaluation. It is, the scope is based within the WHO definition of digital health, which is given here as a broad umbrella term encompassing e-health as well as developing areas of computing sciences in the fields of big data, genomics, and artificial intelligence. All right, it emphasizes digital consumers with a wider range of smart devices and connected equipment used through the Internet of Things for personalized health and medicine. So this is kind of the focus, but the focus is implementation and evaluation. Some of the topics we cover in this is, obviously, that's like the UK distillation of the exhaustive list of competencies. Right? Introducing to the horizon, the breadth and scope of digital health. Critical thinking, introduce some logic, theory into the way you think about applications and software and hardware and programs based on digital health. The methodological principles, because as I've mentioned, we are focused on implementation. We look at the implementation research and program theory. A little bit theoretical, but practical. And applications, we look at apps for individuals in terms of, you know, like supporting smoking cessation, monitoring of cardiac failure, and so on. And populations, looking at not just communities, but also climate change, environment, and so on, and various aspects of air pollution and so on. And implementation is kind of focused on, and we look at a number of theories that underline how you can actually learn from other implementation projects and how to evaluate and critically appraise current projects and policies. And evaluation is core. We talk about logic models, theories, and capability maturity. All right, which is where I introduced the term digital health maturity. Standards, interoperability, and data analytics is, I guess, the current trend, and has got a role in AI, artificial intelligence, and personalized medicine. Obviously, the governance, the ethics, privacy, legislation, and policy issues with compliance to standards, compliance to the regulations, and compliance to safety and quality policies. Then obviously we talk about leadership, governance, and engaging the community and the users in developing, implementing, evaluating, and deploying digital health tools. And then we look at horizon scanning, much like, and so that all these things can be looked at from that perspective as you go back, as the people go back into their health professional practice as digitally mature health professionals. So you can see there's a common thread right from and between what we do in Australia and the UK, and I'm sure it is very similar to a lot of the courses that I'm familiar with, because I've been involved with the EMEA Academy for a while now, and we've been accrediting various courses, and everything goes back to the exhaustive list of competencies and skills required that was kind of developed by the EMEA group. So this is at the university level, at the higher education level. But there are also different levels of different people working in different aspects of the digital health domain. So some people are essentially only looking for, say, certification. So in Australia, there's also a certification in eHealth or in health informatics. This is a program called Certified Health Informatician Australasia. All right. It is based on an exam and is targeted at people who are working in the field and want some theory and principles to underpin the practice. It includes a whole bunch of dimensions, including health and biomedical sciences, information sciences, management sciences, human and social context, and information and communication technology. So this is a little bit more technically focused. It is managed by the Australian Institute of Digital Health, which is an amalgamation of the Health Informatics Society of Australia and the Australasian College of Health Informatics. So this is a certificate course or certification of health informaticians or digital health practitioners. Whatever you like to call them, I think we use it in Australia and I think most of the world as synonymously. So there's that kind of more theoretical but practical university approach. And there is this certification more focused at the vocational and the people working in the space. And the next, I guess, area of training and education in digital health in Australia is the fellowship by training program. This was developed by the Australasian College of Health Informatics, which has combined with Health Informatics Society of Australia to form the Australian Institute of Digital Health. So the Australasian College of Health Informatics offers a fellowship program, and if you're successfully you're successful in this program, you come up with a fellowship of the Australasian College of Health Informatics. and it's being transitioned over to the fellowship of the Australian Institute of Digital Health. What's that? All right. Okay, that's a call to prayer. I can recognize that. All right. So fellowship by training, the program is usually a health informatics research doctoral program at an Australasian university, which usually is a 3-year program. There's 2 paid health informatics 6 months work placements, making it 4 years. So you come out with your PhD and a fellowship of the, used to be Australasian College of Health Informatics, but now fellowship of the AIDH. And there's supplementary programs during that 4 years to help you get a broad scope and understanding of what digital health is all about. And digital health includes health informatics and e-health. So that's the range of training and education that's available in Australia. University-based and certificate-based, certification in the vocational sector, and the fellowship by training. This is, I guess, training the leaders of the digital health domain in Australia and hopefully the world. So that's kind of in a nutshell where the principles of the curriculum is focused on and how it derives, like most other countries in the world, from the work done by the International Medical Informatics Association. And in this case, I haven't forgotten the American Medical Informatics Association as well, or the American College of Medical Informatics, which has contributed to the EMEA curriculum as well. So with that, you can see why I'm talking about a digitally mature health professional. Depending on what they are, all right? So if you're looking at it coming straight through the undergraduate through to postgraduate and master's level programs, you get a one type of health professional, digital health professional. Coming through the certification, usually they're very practical, a lot of experience in the field, and they get some certification to back up their principles and theory. And then with the fellowship by training, it's a combination of both, vocational plus higher education, PhD or master's. So this is what I envisage when I describe a digitally mature health professional. We've been through it. So if you look at the curriculum, is to provide them with the knowledge and skills, right? To be able to critically appraise and successfully adopt or use digital solutions in the health settings to empower health consumers. Remember the UK one, and achieve AI-driven precision medicine. Understand the process and impact indicators of successful implementation of the tools, of digital health tools. Right? Understand the importance of data quality and interoperability. Understand the ethical, legal, social issues. Understand the importance of governance. And to measure and understand how the impacts of digital health technologies on the various components of the health system, health organizations, health professionals, and citizens through systematic measurements, monitoring, and evaluation. So because as I mentioned that that we have a focus in what we do in the Australia or in UNSW, my alma mater, focus on getting the evidence, making sure that the evidence supports the implementation. So there is a focus on implementation. So some of the factors to consider, we ensure that train our students in understanding what are the factors to consider in successful implementation. Obviously, the intervention itself, the digital health tool itself, all right, is an important to understudy, especially some of the usability and utility issues. How it's being applied and implemented in the organization, whether it's general practice or primary care community health centers or hospitals or outpatient clinics or local health districts and so on, all right? The implementation climate and the leadership is very important. Alters the external context and environment, all right? So some of the policies, some of the other requirements of different groups and various incentives. The individuals involved in implementation are important because they are the ones that they are the champions. All right, so we actually have an emphasis on that. And so we actually get individuals who are champions in their fields or champions of their fields to come in and actually share their knowledge with the students and to inform and be role models, I guess. And then the actual process of implementation itself. So this is not new. This is the result of a lot of work by many people across the world. And the consolidated framework for implementation research summarizes a lot of this information. You know, the normalization process theory and so on. They're all part of this complex of understanding successful implementation. Because if you look at the WHO World Health Assembly statements and recommendations, the focus is on making the best use of what we have now. We have a lot of pilot studies. We have a lot of programs, digital health programs that does not go beyond small-scale pilot studies. There's very little large-scale programs implemented and scaled up to be useful at a population level or even at a regional level or a country level. And that highlights the importance of evaluation. Some of you may have attended a lecture, this webinar I did on digital health maturity. And I think one of an important measure of maturity is ability to evaluate and reflect. So if you talk about evaluation, you have to have theories or at least a logic model as to what contributes to successful long-term outcomes. All right. That the actual intervention itself needs to be relevant to what you want to achieve in terms of outcomes. And you need to have resources, activities. So evaluation needs to cover this whole range and of the actual intervention itself. All right, and actual, which may be a tool or maybe a program, doesn't really matter. The principles apply. And you need to consider the context. It's the same thing as implementation. If you consider those things in the implementation, you are actually already embedding evaluation in your interventions. So what has all this got to do with the pandemic? Well, ever since the pandemic started, all our teaching and learning has gone online for obvious reasons. All right. And also telehealth has gained an impetus. So I see a lot of my patients using telehealth during this time. And I teach and assess students during online in an online way as well. And I need to say that it's not just for digital health topics, subjects, but also essentially the undergraduate medical course as well. So the principle is the same. So we use a number of platforms, including some of you may be familiar with it, Moodle, Blackboard, Zoom, and so on, to do lectures, to do tutorials, including breakout groups. So the Blackboard and Zoom allows you to form breakout groups, so you can actually run concurrent sessions at the same time. And obviously you can have discussion forums as a plenary as well as in breakout groups. So it is a kind of virtualizing what we already do, either as a lecture or a seminar or a tutorial, and enable interactivity. Same thing with the same kind of principles apply for conferences nowadays, virtual conferences. Again, you have a plenary and you have breakout groups. So, and I guess it's not going to change very soon. In fact, I think this is going to become the educational delivery and assessment tools going forward. We have always talked about it, but we've never made the move properly or in a kind of a sustained way until the pandemic happens. Then we had no choice. And I think the pandemic this is the good part of the pandemic. It actually has accelerated the implementation of what we always believed will happen, which is telehealth, telemedicine, teleteaching, teleconsultations, and so on. And in terms of online assessment, all right, we have already dabbled with it for many years. All right, and assessment, in this case, might be to critique existing policy or practice, and all this can be done online. And we actually get our students to moderate online discussion forums on various topics and do presentations and so on. But one of the important things in terms of assessment, and it is also applies not just to undergraduate teaching, but also into the telehealth thing, is identification of your patient or your student. Obviously, the integrity of the exam or the assessment will be hard to police based on identification and authentication of the student on its own, but it is an important component of it. So whether you see a patient, the first thing you do, or a student before you assess them, you identify them and authenticate them. So I think that's some of the kind of online workarounds or modifications that we use as part of moving from face-to-face to virtual teaching, learning, and assessment. So that's essentially kind of where we are at in terms of pandemic impacts on our teaching and learning. To finish off, I guess, a couple of messages, basically importance of identification and authentication in whatever you do in the pandemic era. But I think generally, whether it's pandemic or non-pandemic, curriculum attributes are important. The curriculum got to be relevant and valid. It's not going to be, it does not have to be so comprehensive and complex as the EMEA work has done. But it's got to be relevant and valid in terms of meeting the town and with the meeting between the town and gown, which is the practicality and the academia. It's got to stimulate the practical intellect. It's got to develop in the students, right, in the learner. That intellect is not just with your brains, but also with your hands. All right, manu is manual, refer to hands. Et mente refers to your brains. Et sermo, which refers to the fact that you need to have a discourse on whatever you've learned using your hands or brains. All right, so the practical intellect is essentially some proposition knowledge, application of the knowledge, and discussing what you learned with your colleagues. And it's got to be user-centered, all right, for obvious reasons. Not just in terms of the content, but also the process. The learner has got to learn, either in practice or on practice. Okay, so I think I will stop here and take questions.
Thank you, Professor Tang. So we're now open for questions. You may leave your questions here in the chat box.
Professor Tang, this is
Yes.
Jay here.
Oh, hi, Jay.
Yes, I really like this term, digitally mature health professional. It's means it's very interesting. I have a couple of questions here, as others probably may be typing in. Is there any particular online course that is available from UNSW right now, which our members can take? And then my second question is, you mentioned about the fellowship program. Is it open for only those with who have registered for PhD, or those with the equal or any other relevant qualifications based on the work they have already done in terms of work experience? Thank you.
Yep. That's a very good question, Jay. In terms of the fellowship, well, I guess to get rid of the online course, yes, the course will be available online next term and subsequently. All right. So if you want to do something like what I've just described, all right, that'd be available. But there are also other universities that does that bachelor levels and the master's level. Most of the universities, like we do a lot of PhD in that space, in the digital space, and we also just focus on the master's level. We don't focus on the bachelor's level, and obviously the certificate level, which is right, people who are interested in short courses and so on. So getting over that. So in terms of the fellowship by training, the starting point was the easiest way to start was to make it eligible for appropriately qualified people doing PhDs, which means they're doing it in a digital health subject. So we got a range of people doing that, kind of anything from social aspects of digital health to pure technical science and data science. So they apply and become part of this fellowship by training program. So that makes them eligible to work placements for 6 months each, and they're paid by the organization. So their PhD degree, or what they call the PhD and fellowship degree, becomes a 4-year program. And they become, hopefully, well, some of them actually have moved on to become part of the workforce. But I think the idea is that by being part of the workforce during their fellowship by training, they develop the expertise and interest in that particular space of the organization that employed them. So there are people who have been with the Australian Digital Health Agency, various vendors, universities, and so on. So in terms of eligibility, this is how we started. You need to be enrolled in a PhD program. We haven't, the fellowship, there's another pathway into the fellowship, which is through a portfolio process. But then that's a portfolio process where if you've got a lot of work experience in that area, have done, like in your case, kind of a lot of digital health and telehealth material experience and expertise, you build up the portfolio, including some of your like papers and courses done, and at what level you did your degree and so on, whether it's bachelor's, master's, or PhD. So they all give you a number of points to qualify for the award of a fellowship of the Australasian College of Health Informatics. So that's the second way. The third way, I can't think of it now, but I don't think we're still thinking about different ways of that, but they can enroll as part of the full fellowship by training. But right now, the entry into the fellowship by training is through a PhD enrollment. So that's essentially 2 ways right now. Does that answer your question, Jen?
Yes, Professor Teng, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sir Jai and Professor Teng. So we have another question from one of our participants regarding your PhD requirements. So what are the main requirements for it?
The PhD is like any other university requirements for PhD. So you need to have either a good honors degree or a master's degree before you can be enrolled, or you need to do an MPhil before you can be enrolled in a PhD. So once you are in the PhD and you apply to the college, and then you can be part of the fellowship by training program.
Thank you, Professor. Our next question is, in some part, health informatics education seems to tandem with health information management. So what can you say about this?
Well, I think they should be, I think they should be kind of integrated and coordinated. I think even though, like, for instance, I don't know the questioner, might be familiar with the American scene where the HIMSS and the AeHIN have got two separate big conferences, and apparently do not kind of meet to get, doesn't seem to be coordinating together, but there is in the back at the back of it, behind the scenes, attempts to kind of marry or coordinate the curriculum for health information management and health informatics. Obviously, the space is getting a bit confused by the data science space as well. So there is that kind of tension of data science, health information management, and health informatics trying to kind of work together, I guess, with seamless borders in this space, because they all contribute to various aspects of digital health, especially in the definition adopted by the WHO. So I guess the short answer to your question is, theoretically, that there are political kind of issues in terms of keeping them separate. But conceptually, I think there's a lot of overlap amongst the three. And I think hopefully the saner brains will ensure that the overlaps actually start to strengthen the individual kind of circles that make up the Venn diagram. But I'm sure, you know, I don't know about whatever country you're in, but in Australia we had the same problem. But at the same time, by kind of encouraging interaction between these three spaces, we'll get somewhere that's more, shall we say, effective in the way we work together.
We have another question. So, what are your thoughts on the reasons for the poor adoption of the EMEA competencies since they have been around for a while?
That's a good question and difficult to answer. They have been around for a while, and they're also in the process of adapting to the evolution and future and the development as we move into the future with different aspects of information technology and information science. When we first did all this stuff with the EMEA a long time ago, there's been a review in 2016, I think. And I think the International Academy is also now looking at how to actually bundle the competencies together in terms of making it in different domains that's relevant to the way digital health is evolving, and recognizing the importance of the different components I was talking about: health information management, data science, and actually informatics itself within the context of the WHO definition of digital health. So it is evolving along those lines. So there will be people who are either purely computer scientists working in this digital health area, or there will be purely data scientists working in the digital health area. In fact, we have annual forums for the FBT trainees to present their work, and these kind of questions get discussed. You know, is data science part of digital health? You know, those kind of philosophical questions, which I think should be focused on the overlap as opposed to the differences. So I don't think it's wise to try to adopt all the digital health competencies that's been listed in the EMEA framework. I think you need to focus in terms of what your institutional skills are, you know, your university or professional group or school or whatever, you know. So focus on that, what's important. And then, you know, because like you see the example of I gave with the UK distillation of the EMEA thing, and our work in distillation of the EMEA curriculum as well. There's always, you introduce them to the scope, and then you introduce them at the end to looking at the horizon, where what they've learned in between is going to take them, you know, in their career in the future. I think that's very important, because it's not just looking at the technical development, it's looking at how the philosophy and the culture of digital health develops. And right now it is implementation evaluation, because we are conscious of the fact that, you know, there's a lot of small pilot projects. You know, often struggling to get financial support and other support to, even though they've got good evidence and have the potential to scale up successfully. It's very hard to get that going. So I think that's some of the areas of how we actually been doing a lot of things, but we haven't brought it together. Obviously, at the other, in parallel to this is the AI stuff, the big data, how we actually going to kind of synergize with that to push the digital health world forward. So, but short answer, you can't do it all this list of the competencies in the email. Focus on what your country needs or what your region needs and what your skills are. And there are enough range of skills in the world to bring everything together forward.
Thank you, Professor Teng. We have our last set of questions from our participants. In your opinion, is the academe as a whole digitally mature? Will they be able to deliver the same quality of education as that given in face-to-face education? And are they able to manipulate teaching technology more than the technology manipulating them?
Very good. I don't think we know the answers to that. Well, to the question, I don't think we know the answers. That's why as we move, because we've been, all the work we've done with, say, online education and using the technologies and the different media to teach students, you know, at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels in the universities, has shown that it does improve the knowledge, but it doesn't stick. So so it actually improves the efficiency of learning, but it doesn't improve the sustainability of the learning. If you get what I mean, you know, the learning is quick, but it doesn't last. All right. So I think the same thing we'll find with this move to online teaching as well. Although it might have more sustained effects because of the fact that we really are moving into a brave new world now, because we know that there's going to be second wave, third waves, and fourth, how many waves of COVID or flu or SARS or MERS or whatever coming, you know, it's become a reality, a way of life. So we need to have those kind of as the core, online as the core and face-to-face as a luxury. And therefore, because it becomes the core, online becomes the core as opposed to on the side as a luxury, then maybe the learning will sustain. Not just using the tools, but also the learning from using the tools. That's my hope anyway. But that we need to do the research to find out. So can't answer your question, sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor Teng. So we have now reached the top of the hour. So before we close, I would like to call on Sir Jai Ganesh.
Thank you, Professor Teng and your team. It has been a wonderful journey for the past over a month, and it's a great privilege for us, for you to be with us for over a month and giving these lectures as a series. And I think, if I recollect right, I think this is the last topic in the series, and then we are really thankful to you. And then this is also coming at a very, very, very appropriate time, wherein we are also discussing about online training for the MOH right now. So it's also coming at a very right time. I think we will also get in touch with you. And thank you again, once again, to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Bye.